when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Ooh, hey, book clubbers! It's been a minute since we had a regular episode. So happy to see you. Thank you for all of the wonderful comments you had about last week's chat with Mr. Steven Erikson. It was wonderful. It was such a treat. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. And I hope you saw our new logo that should have, if all things go well, started this episode. A logo designed by the one and only Lana Bashinsky. Hi, Lana.
Hello. Thank you for teeing that up to ensure that that logo is definitely there, baby.
If it's not,
well,
it's not. That's okay.
So happy to be back. We were just talking about the show. I'm like, do I remember how to do this? Do I have my sentence? How do I even dance anymore?
I know. How do I dance?
But I'm so excited for this. What feels like such a very fresh start of a couple
It
weeks
really
off,
does.
but also the type, where the book has begun.
It really does feel like a fresh start, not just because we've had a few weeks off. We've kind of taken a breath between the third novel and the fourth novel. That's where we are. We're on the fourth novel of Steven Erikson's Malazan Book of the Fallen. And you had the wonderful idea, because we usually start these shows with a non-spoiler topic, so you can sort of hang out with us, even if you're not caught up to where we are in the reading. But you had the wonderful idea, because this fourth novel really does start in a fresh place, that we could, in lieu of having a different non-spoiler topic, we could sort of talk about, in a very non-spoiler way, our overall feelings of starting this novel, which I think is a great idea. Because I will say, I don't know how you feel about this. I will say okay, first of all, we've only read the prologue and chapters 1 and 2 so far. That's where we've stopped. So I don't know where the next few chapters are leading, but my position is I might hand these first 2 chapters to anyone that's curious about the Malazan Book of the Fallen as like, read this.
Yes.
Then go back. But read these first 2 chapters. Tell me you're not completely hooked on this.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited about these first 2 chapters. We talked a bit about the previous books, and sort of, at the end of last episode, we sort of did like our stack ranking of our order of which ones we like better or worse. And, all of them being great. This one, right off the bat, the way that it's written, there's it feels like it's constantly shaving away layers. Every chapter, I feel like the page turns and I've got a little more information. There's a pretty quick build into the characters that we're into and the space that we're into. It is so engaging. I'm very, very sucked into these first ones.
Well, and also, Mr. Erikson has mentioned a number of times, I think once with us, but I've seen it in numerous interviews, that he sort of began novel 4 as a reaction to some of the feedback he'd gotten for the first 3 novels, which said, oh, Erikson jumps around in POV. He can't stick with one character very long. And so he sort of started this novel to prove the naysayers wrong. And I think the result is something that is much more traditional narrative, not much more linear kind of, you're in one character's POV, you're there for a long time. And I think that might be the kind of thing that people that are disoriented by the other novels, or that might, feel like they're jumping in the deep end. Like this novel, as you said, it builds, it's much more a conventional kind of fantasy setting in that you are with one character, the world is being built around that character, and your knowledge of what's happening is sort of starting from I think a much more neutral place. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. But I do want to clarify that, like, even like the prologue, super short, again, no spoilers, but I felt like even every step of the way through the teeny tiny prologue felt like every fact that I learned changed my perception of what was happening in that scene. So the prologue is kind of a microcosm as it feels. I will say all across that chapter jump, chapter 1 to chapter 2, and chapter 2 starts with the same characters, I actually was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like, it is so different. So
yeah. Well, and there are clearly, I mean, we'll get to it, and we're not in spoilers yet, but we'll get to the fact that there is a lot of stuff that we have learned from the first 3 novels that kind of creeps in. But I honestly think it would work for, obviously that stuff enriches the read, but I think it would work for somebody that's never touched a Malazan book to start here and then go back, because it is so, it's so thrilling, and it is so, you're catapulted into this story, and it kind of doesn't matter that you don't know the references that are being made a little bit later on, because he starts you in a completely fresh culture that we've never touched before, even as readers of the first 3 novels. And so we're all learning about these people new, and I think, go ahead.
I think because it's this new culture, the things that eke in, again, it's one of those moments that I'm like, ooh, I feel so smart because I know that thing and they don't. Right. But if you didn't know those things, you would still feel the weight of like the impact that it's having on the characters, because you would be living even more with these characters that we've met through their journey, and wondering at the things that they don't know about. And then the excitement, I think, would be for you going back and starting over and learning about those things, and then gaining that taste again, being like, aha, I'm in the know now. I'm part of the cool kids.
Yeah. I honestly have a couple of friends that got all excited when I was telling them about these books and started reading, and they're like, I don't know. And I kind of want to just be like, read these first 2 chapters and tell me. I honestly, I'm given to hyperbole, so forgive me for that. But I would put these first 2 chapters up against any first 2 chapters of a fantasy novel I've ever read, or any novel for that matter. Like these, I think these are some of the most entertaining. This is the most entertaining start to a novel maybe I've ever read. It is just, you're just shot out of a cannon, and there's so much nuance. And I know all of these people so well, so immediately, and the way the world is built out, and the sort of customs and the culture and the interactions between people, and the way that culture is challenged, and all of that stuff is so masterfully written. I am blown away. I mean, we've been loving these novels, and I feel like, I went back and watched some of our interview with Mr. Erikson, and he said at the end, he's like, well, I finished Memories of Ice, and I figured I had to one up myself. And I'm like, he like right away.
Just handshake to past Steven Erikson. Well done.
Yeah.
Sir.
I truly think this is one of the coolest ways to start a book I have ever read. It feels like I'm in the climax of a different book. It feels like this is where a book gets to when it crescendos.
I feel like there's and I feel like everything I want to say now is going to dip into what people might perceive as spoiler land. So I don't want to say
we can get there.
Too much more, but
yeah,
it feels like a crescendo. And then I know I just said it like 10 times in a row, but every little layer that's kind of peeled back adds to that crescendo. It adds to that. There's just so much intrigue. I feel immediately drawn in and wanting to see how the rest of this sort of weaves into the rest of the Malazan tapestry.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do it then. Let's get, I hope that entices some folks that may not be reading with us to dip their toes in, because I really do think, I'm wondering, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will answer this question for me. I'm wondering what the larger Malazan community feels about, I've never really seen any kind of like reading order, because people are pretty much like, the reading order is the release order. But I kind of feel like for folks that are maybe disoriented or overwhelmed by the way the first few novels are written, I just feel like this is for more traditional fantasy readers. This is like what gets you hooked. It could really work that way. I don't
And the
know.
thing I'm really fascinated about is how many people, when we were reading Memories of Ours, was like, this is the one for me. Like, of
Yeah.
the series, this is the one. When, don't get me wrong, I love Memories of Ice. Obviously, you and I had some very powerful moments, like tearful moments reading
Right.
the book, both just like privately while reading, like on the show, powerful stuff. But there is like an excitement that if this is like if the start of the one-upping of Memories of Ice,
I know.
I'm like, I just can't wait. I can't wait to see what this ends up being.
It's so good. All right, let's get to it now. Spoilers for the prologue and chapters 1 and 2 of House of Chains starting now. One of the tiny disagreements I would have with you, I guess, based on what I'm reading into what you just said, is that it feels like you enjoyed the prologue more than I did. I feel like of everything we've read this week, the prologue was my least favorite part. It was still cool, but I felt like it was, it was one of those ones we've talked about before where I sort of just let it wash over me because I really didn't know what I was being told, which is in contrast to Memories of Ice's prologue, which felt to me like it was very clearly setting up something. Obviously that paid off huge. I didn't know that at the time, but it still felt like it was setting up something, a dynamic that was very interesting and I was hooked. And this one felt like dude's getting chained. This is pretty brutal, pretty awful. He's getting all the hair stripped off his body. That's rough.
The reason that I liked it is that peeling back. So reading it like at first, so I read the prologue a ways ago, and then I read the first 2 chapters yesterday. So the prologue is like a little bit foggier in my brain, but it sort of builds in such a way that it's like a man and he's looking out, and it seems almost like a serene moment. You're like, here's a dude doing it, being a guy.
He's walking along the beach, baby.
And then he's like,
enjoying the surf.
he's in chains. He's a prisoner. So maybe he's a bad dude. And then it's like, he's going to be punished, bad guy or whatever. And then it's like, that's his family. He's like a prisoner of his family is ostracizing him. And it's like who this person is and the picture you're building of him, I felt like changed every paragraph. Something new was revealed. And then with the end of it being that there was like the Warren like pouring water into the thing. So this is probably, it's either coming from the flooded Warren or we're inside the Warren where all the water is flooding to that like we know that somebody took a boat through previously.
Right.
Is this next to the split where the boat tore out from the previous novel? Or is this the inside of the Warren? Like the complete lack of like spatial or time awareness of where we are based upon the previous books. It was interesting to like try and dig into that. But likewise, I kind of overall just like peeked my eye at some of the details and let it wash over me.
Yeah.
But the building and I mean, it's not very long. It's like 6 minutes read or something like that. Like how that character is revealed page over page. A guy, a prisoner of his family, brutally tormented by his family and then abandoned. Yeah. Was a quick and interesting arc for me.
I don't disagree with any of that. I just kind of felt like and again, I fully expect by the end of this book to be like, that was everything. It was all there, which is what it tends to happen.
It was Kellerman.
Yeah. I do have another point of annoyance, which is that we're introduced to Sengar, and then literally by the end of chapter 2, we meet Silgar. And my poor little brain has a hard time with stuff that looks similar. Yeah. Silgar and Sengar, not related in any way.
Or based upon the chapters, maybe are.
Maybe are. I don't know. Anyway, interesting. Certainly a brutal moment of torture. That like the way this culture ostracizes you is pretty interesting. So we'll find out what that means. But then we jump into really where we stay for both of these chapters, and I'm told the entire first book 1, The Faces in the Rock. We are in Teblor lands, and the very first scene is kind of a more of a nebulous scene where we just sort of get the Urid tribe killing a dog, which was very harrowing scene of this, like the way they corner it and stab it, brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're sort of introduced to the 7 faces in the rock, which are the 7 gods of the Teblor. And I know we get a date in relation to Burn's sleep at the beginning of chapter 1. I haven't been tracking that number.
I was like this close to going back and reading all of the story openers or the chapter openers from the past books, and I was like, yeah, it'll come to me if it does.
Yeah. I mean, I know he literally tells us when this is, but I kind of liked not knowing when this was, because we're in this completely fresh culture and it kind of feels primitive. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, are we way back in time? Because, with Malazan, you never know if you're thousands of years ago, if you're current to what we've been reading or whatever.
Or if you're even on, I don't know the name of the whole planet. Is the whole planet Genebacchus?
No, Genebacchus is one of the continents.
It's whatever the name of the planet is.
Yeah.
Like, are we in a warren or are we on the planet?
Right. But I kind of like, he literally gives us the information right there, but I'm just too lazy to check the numbers. And I kind of liked that. I have to say, I was like, well, I don't really know when. I'm just going to go with this and see what's going on. Anyway, we're introduced to our main character, our POV character, Karsa Orlong. And I mean, this is so different than what we've been doing, because with the Malazan novels, it feels like we go from, scene to scene to scene because it's changing and changing kind of summer. But now it feels, I still feel like we should go chronologically, but it's so different because it's just this big arc that is happening. Go ahead.
Did you have first thoughts of Karsa?
Yeah.
Karsa, so there's a book, I think that I recommended it on an earlier episode of this called Under Major Domo Minor. And I described it as you're sort of through the POV of somebody who's like kind of despicable,
right?
Like kind of like a whelp in certain ways. They're confident in certain things they could do, but you're in their brain. And the whole time you're reading it, you're like, God, this person's an idiot.
Right.
And I definitely have those vibes with Karsa.
Sure.
And of course, those, they like, change over time, as always. There's like, well, now I'm rooting for him or whatever. But these whole couple chapters like remind me of that, of him being like, I'm gonna be blessed by the gods, and then Dalis is gonna marry me. She's gonna love me so much after I go on my campaign that nobody supports. Where is kind of like the vibe I get from Karsa, and I am very enamored with being in the POV of somebody that I don't think I would get along with very well.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing because there are times I'm like, this dude's a badass. I mean, come on. He's a badass. Like, I admire his just unquestioned confidence,
Like, he's got an attitude, but like, he's one of those annoying people. You're like, I guess you backed it up.
Yeah, and he constantly is proven right when, going there with Byroth and Dellum, and they're like, we really should rest the horses. He's like, oh, you want to rest the horses? Yeah? Okay, wusses. Let's rest the horses. Or, he's like, maybe we should not ride during the, only at night because
He's like, sorry, I didn't know you're a bunch of cowards. I didn't know I was riding with a bunch of cowards. Okay.
They're like, well, we'll start a war. He's like, yup, that's exactly what I want to do. I'm going to do that.
Sorry,
and I'm going to kill everybody.
Strut? I was here for glory. I would be legend.
And then he goes in and does it. And you're like, he's a badass. He's a badass. He's a total a-hole, but he's a badass.
Yeah, but then it's also so funny because it shows also like his companions that he's kind of trash talking.
Yeah.
Also being badass. Like,
I know.
Everybody's sort of making good choices.
But to your point, there's that wonderful scene, and I know we're skipping around because it's hard not to with this one, but there's a wonderful scene we'll get to where Byloth is having that conversation with him. Where he's like, "Are we the assholes?
Are we the baddies?
Is it us? Are we?" I just want to throw out the concept that maybe we're the terrible murderers.
We're gonna go ahead and
good.
say impossible. Everybody else is liars. It's the children who are wrong.
Quite literally in this one. Yeah. But I also love, in sort of building Karsa's persona and being inside his psyche, like I feel his family dynamic so perfectly. I mean, not because I relate to it, but just because it's so well illustrated, so perfectly expressed. The way, his grandfather was this boastful, awesome dude who sat around the campfire telling him about his glory. And his dad was like, screw that. I actually like peace. And Karsa's like, no, peace is for losers. I want glory like grandpa.
Example, obviously, like much more recently that kind of stuck in my head is like Kylo Ren. Grandpa was so cool. Dad, you suck. I want to be like grandpa. It was I got that angst and that rage for like just wishing the person who like immediately took care of me was cool. I'm like,
so
yeah,
beautiful.
I guess he trained me to be like a great swordsman, but he wasn't confident about it.
No one thinks he's awesome like they think grandpa's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love the little cracks in it where every time he gets some information about grandpa, they're like, oh, no, he wasn't like that at all. He begged for passage through.
Yeah.
So awesome.
But then like there's like these seeds of doubt. Like there's like a confusion where it's like people are like, he wasn't like that at all. But then he's like, this is what my grandfather said about the past. And all of those facts are correct.
Right.
And so it's like, there's like unreliable conversations happening and who's actually is he a badass or is he a pathetic whelp who just remembers the bone path because he crawled down it.
Right. All right, so one of the things that I think is so cool is how we're inside this very alien culture in a way that they live hundreds of years, and so Karsa is 80 years old but still considered a young person. How they're giants, basically, these enormous compared to human beings, and they call humans children,
Did you realize that was happening until you met the first human?
No, it was a total revelation. But I think two things are true. I thought about this a lot, and I thought about it. I didn't go back and reread it to confirm it. So feel free, audience, to challenge me. Feel free, you, Lana, to challenge me. But I think both things are true because I don't think Erikson is letting you off the hook. I don't think it's like, oh, thank goodness he's not killing children. I think he's also killing children. I think, yes, they call humans children. They call the lowlanders children because they look like children. But also the plan is to go into the other lands, murder an entire generation of kids and the elders, impregnate all the women, and you've basically just eliminated there's no recovering from that. That is a complete decimation of a culture. You've now destroyed an entire generation. There's no way to reseed that generation. You've lost like a generation of people.
And if that culture wants even like a fraction of who they are to survive, they have to keep your children because at least they're half of their tribe.
Right.
I fully agree with you on that. And I will try and wait chronologically to discuss why I think we both probably know why that is. But I definitely got that vibe of him going to kill children. And like even in those first scenes where they go off their hunting mission and they go and they destroy people and impregnate women, I thought it was very clear, exactly as you illustrated it, that the point is like, no, not your kids, my kids.
It is, it's vile, right?
Yeah.
But it is, what a plan. Like as an effective, an efficacious plan, that's pretty diabolical. That is like you've completely dominated another culture. You've subsumed them into your own, It's,
And the fact that it seems like everybody's like has a similar mission, that kind of happens, and everybody's like, "We know what you're coming for."
Yeah. The ladies are like, "Here we go."
Literally.
All right. So, starting at the beginning, I love, as you said, we've established that Karsa has this sort of fondness for Dalis and it wants her blessing, and she's totally gonna bless me when I leave. We are introduced to the faces in the rock, the 7 gods, and he prays to the faces in the rock. I'm still not super clear on what's going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's okay. And he plans to retrace his grandfather Palk's steps by raiding the other lands and going to Silver Lake, which is near where I lived in Los Angeles.
So here's the question that I just thought of it regarding these 7 faces. I know, at one point they're like, "Don't talk to me about your pig gods," which I assume is the Daniel Warren. What's his name? Whatever. We know that the pig god who's like not a god anymore. Guy.
Yeah. Not Fenner, but
Fenner. Yeah. But how many like mask council members are there? Are like the 7 got like faces in the rock just like, sure, you can call me rock face guy, but I am Hood.
That's interesting. I assumed that they were just misinterpreting something as the gods, but maybe they're just looking at the same gods we know, but not knowing them by the names we know them. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's probably more likely, actually. Yeah. So we have a scene with Karsa going to his father's house, and he's just expecting his dad to have this bad relationship with him, but his father says, "Oh, you want Dalis's blessing? She already blessed Byroth," and he's like, "Well, what? Well, she did?" And he's like, "Yeah." I think that's awesome because Byroth doesn't like violence. I don't like violence. Violence is lame. And we have this really interesting image, I think, of the blood posts, which he's not decorating. He's not, he's letting the birds poop on them and stuff. And they're, Karsa's really upset that he's not honoring the sacrifice of his children. But it's not explicitly said, but it really seemed to me that like being forced to sacrifice a child or multiple children is what turned Sinig, the father, against the sort of ways of his culture.
Yeah. I feel like there's a world where maybe he witnessed that through his life. Like, we don't know, does Sinig have siblings? Has he experienced that? And he was like the one to survive and has sort of survivor's guilt from that. We don't know what his relationship is like with his dad, other than his dad is like, "You're a failure." Right. Was he a failure only after he had his own child, or is it that he's born into this culture where violence was the thing and he's just never been down with it? And so he's down with it enough that he doesn't want to be ostracized from his community. So what can I do? Everybody says this is the way of the world. I don't know that. I don't feel like I have the agency to really change it, but I won't celebrate it, was sort of the vibe that I got from it.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I'm reading between the lines a bit, but I think it's a valid reading to see the 4 blood posts. And then later we get that scene with where literally the children that have been sacrificed, like their spirits manifest, appear. So the 4 blood posts are for the 4 children that he's killed or sacrificed to the faces in the rock. Mm-hmm. And it just felt so consistent with me that being forced to do that would be the thing that made him go, what are we even doing here? But maybe I'm reading too much into it. Anyway, I just thought that was beautiful.
I think both are valid. Mine may be like my interpretation may be slightly broader, but the same sort of root space.
And I don't think they're mutually exclusive either.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I meant to say.
But interestingly, the father still gifts Karsa Havoc, the badass horsey.
Well, what made me giggle is like, Karsa shows up and is like, "I'm expecting my dad to be a total jerk because he's so lame." And he's like, "Here, you can have this horse." And you're like, "Oh, maybe his dad has a good relationship with him." And I'm kind of like, maybe his dad has a good relationship with the horse. And he like sees that this would be right. And he's like, "All right, do your thing, kids." And he's like, "Goodbye, sweet horsey. I know this is what you want."
Yeah. It's awesome. He's like, "I'm going to give him one last ride." It's also really cool the way Erikson kind of characterizes the animals in this world that are, they themselves are sort of supernatural. you know,
Mm-hmm.
like they have a level of intelligence and intention, I think, that is beyond what you would see in the natural world, right? These horses, they're like down to kill, they like love it too. And the
Mm-hmm.
dogs too, we'll get to the dog scene, but the dogs are like, they get it, you know, there's an intelligence there that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. But it's funny, this scene also has Karsa going up to Byroth and being like, hey, when I get back, I'm gonna marry Dallas. And Byroth's like,
Like,
sure you are, dude. Yeah, you totally are. I guess we'll leave. I'm following you, buddy.
yeah. Whenever you get back, you say, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. My favorite character in these two chapters, by the way, is Byroth.
Yes.
I love me some Byroth, and it's really, I mean, not to jump ahead, but it's a bummer that we're done with Byroth.
But are we?
I mean, I feel like loss of a head is pretty, in this world, that's pretty final, but maybe not. All right. So this is the scene right after that is when we have the actual spirits of the sacrificed children, like, come up out of the ground and kind of talk, and they're like, you know, and these are the secret tribe called the Found,
Mm-hmm.
for Sabal the Unfound. So there's 7 gods and 6 tribes. One of the tribes has been wiped out. And so and Sabal the Unfound was the god for that tribe, I guess. And so she has created her own tribe of sacrificed spirit kids.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know anything else about that, but I thought that was really interesting.
I thought it was interesting as well, but that was also my thing where I was like, well, I guess the connection that I sort of think of is, what's his name? Kalam and his girl have a bunch of kids now that we never have talked about, but they found them as like a history of.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those are all the kids that were on the being.
Were they like real kids though? I forget. Were they actual children, or were they like
spirit kids?
Kids in a warren that I think they were spirit kids. Then Hood was like, "Fine, have the kids," and like respawn them all or whatever.
Interesting.
That's like the only thought I. Really
that's a connection. About. I do think that's interesting. Then we have a scene where without Karsa, where Grandpa comes to Dad's house. Palk goes to Sinig's house to get mad at him for not blessing Karsa's journey. And I thought the scene was awesome. Just the dynamic between the father and son there, the elder father and the grandfather. Mm-hmm. And that Sinig like sees through the BS, right? Everybody else is buying Palk's bravado and in my day I murdered everybody, and Sinig is totally sees through that, and eventually just literally physically tosses him out onto the street.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, he was only in there for this much, but just the general demeanor, Sinig is up there, and like, I like that. Yeah, I like that guy. That guy and I get along. Yeah. I also, before I continue, I love sort of the reveal as they're going and setting out on this journey. You know, Palk's all mad at Sinig for not like blessing the journey. I guess I don't know how big the village is, but the fact that it's just these 3 dudes being like, time for victory. It was the most like bros, gotta do bros. It just felt like their own like, why are they doing this? Just for their own glory? Nobody else seems to be like, we gotta get it done. It's just these 3 guys like out on the town is like the vibe that I kind of got from their journey as they pieced out. It wasn't like everybody in the village like, good luck, warriors. It was just like a personal mission.
We're going streaking.
Yeah, we're going to kill children.
Nothing's coming with you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Go do it.
I also, and then none of the elders came out to see them off, right? None of the elders blessed their departure either. But then they have that conversation later where Kars is like, yeah, well, they didn't bless us, but when we are victorious and awesome and we get back, they're going to say they blessed us. And
was that
we're just going to have
said that or Baloth?
Or maybe it was Baloth.
Baloth was like, prepare yourself for this. Bayroth. He was like, prepare yourself for that. Like, no, I don't know if it's Bay or Bay.
I don't either.
Bayroth.
Erikson was on last week, and he was like, "Here's some pronunciations," and he didn't say that one.
I forgot. I vape all of them immediately evacuated my brain. I'll have to
I
go
went back and listened to it just to be like,
really?
what are the pronunciations he says, but he doesn't say that one. Yeah.
He's like, that one's obvious. Come on.
Yeah. Even you guys can't screw that one up. Well, we can. But anyway, you're right. I think it was Byroth who says, like, they're gonna lie and say we did it, or say we blessed you the whole time, and it's on us to go along with that lie, or else it gets bad for us. Like, we have to, and it's such, again, such insightful,
so poignant
dynamic. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially in these days of make your own truth, Okay, so we get some travel time with the trio, and I love their dynamic. I love their talks. I love, sitting around and, them doubting Karsa, and Karsa being like, nope, we're doing it. We're doing it the hard way. We're doing it. And them just being like, must we? Yes. I'm the war leader. Okay. Following you, war leader. Just awesome.
I was Karsa is so unlikable to me from like the whole mission of like, oh, he's gonna go kill kids. He's like, Dalis will be my wife. What? I'm like, take your fedora off. I hope you fail. I was like, where I was kind of sitting. So as soon as like, we're doing it the hard way, I was like, okay, good luck, honey.
Yeah.
And then he succeeds, and it's like,
I know, it's so great because you feel for Delamain and Byroth, because you're like, those guys make sense. Those guys are like, rest the horses, stay out of the light. Like, let's be stealthy. Let's do this the smart way. And Karsa's like, no, man, we're kicking ass, taking names. We're going in. We're just smashing doors.
And then of course there's like the begrudging respect, like even from me as like the reader of the book, being like, all right, he's pretty tactically great. That worked out really well.
Yeah. So we get some cool information about the Teblor, and the fact that they, at least they believe it's because of their god, that they are immune to disease. They can eat raw rabbit meat without worrying about getting sick. And they have this blood oil that they put on their swords to make their swords super rad. And that if you have any of it, you get a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Sorry, that's a really sweet way of saying that. Yeah, you have it. It's either giving you a lust for battle or anything else.
Yeah, lust for lust.
Lust for lust.
So we have our first battle scene where they find this Rathid camp, and Karsa, they're like, there's 8 of them. We should probably like just sneak. And Karsa's like, Leroy Jenkins. And it works out. He goes in, he's just murdering little kids, murdering adults. He takes out 7 of the 8, while the other 2 guys like chase down the 8th one.
Well, the other 2 guys, aren't they like missed one?
Yeah.
Is that this time? And then he's like, I want that way, because they're gonna all leave the village now, and then we can sort of pick them off tactically. Every time they're like, gotcha, he's like, no, you didn't. I planned that. Yeah. I planned that.
Well, he even better than that. He's like, think about it. You're the smart one. Think about it. And Byroth's like, oh, so the kid goes away, hates you forever, never lets go of it, becomes a war leader himself with vengeance on his mind, comes back to kill you, and you have an even greater glory. And Karsa's like, bingo.
It's like, it's not about winning, it's about the legend.
Yeah. It's like that scene in Kill Bill where the little daughter of one of the ladies that Uma Thurman kills, she's like, train, grow up, train, come back and see me. It's like, that's the honorable thing to do.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of the stuff about witnessing, witness, which many people pointed out is what Mr. Erikson said at the end of our...
Everybody in the comments.
Tip of the hat, sir. Tip of the hat.
Everybody in the comments from the interview last week, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to witness it too. And I was like, oh no, I'm reading something.
Yeah. All right. So we more slaughter. We get
More slaughter, and
More
that's the end of
slaughter.
book 2
Yeah.
or chapter 2.
They finally make their way to the actual village, the Rathid village, and we've sussed out Karsa's plan of like having such a big impact on what's happened that all the warriors will go out and try to hunt them down, leaving the village without any warriors in it. They show up and kill all the children. This is where we're actually killing actual children. Although
did we get the dogs before this or after this?
This is after this.
Okay.
First we kill the children, but to be fair, in Teblor, children are like 40.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make it better, but whatever. And then we have this amazing sequence with interacting with the women and like, I'm going to have sex with 14 of them.
And they're like, good luck. They're going to get back before then. And they're like, we young, baby. I'm a young 40. And they prove them wrong in the grossest way possible.
Yeah. So, I'm curious what your reaction to this scene is. Because, I think this is the most sort of gender normative we've seen Erikson write. This is the most sort of anyway, I'll let you react. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, my take was that I think it could have been the reason I felt like this scene was like, oh, everybody was like, you won. I guess this is what happens now. This scene could have been much more violent. Right. And I felt like it was softer in a way because it felt like this was the expectation. All right, you beat us in the village. We're all here. We know what's up. Baby time. Let's go. And everybody was kind of like waiting their turn. And to the degree that it was even described as like some of the women seemed to like be enjoying it, but I forget if it was because they made them smell the blood oil or not, because they made them want it.
No, I don't think they ever had to use that. He kept saying we will use it, but we're not going to have to because we're rad.
And then so it seemed like that was like interesting to me. And it made it like quite bearable to read because it seemed like everybody expected this, just culturally was like, you earned it. And it seemed like people were like, oh no, in like a weird way. And then the part that they were upset about, what was the specificity of how he interacted with the wife of the chief of that tribe. I forget actually.
Well, she was like, well, don't make me do it in my husband's house. He's like, oh, we're definitely going to the husband's house right now.
Yeah.
But there's also like, there's a line where the daughter, who is the last one that he sleeps with, the daughter's like, Mom said you were surprisingly gentle, which I thought was an interesting detail. And also there's like, they talk about the eagerness, and Karsa has that reflection where he's like, oh, they're eager for us because we're the strongest.
Yeah.
If they came to our village, our women would be the same way. Like he has that revelation of like, oh, there's nothing special about us. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know if that makes it better or not, but
yeah, I mean, it makes it like, I think that word softer is nice. It makes it softer to read. Like the reality of it is you came and slaughtered a bunch of people and now you're forcefully impregnating all these women. But the culture of this society, these various tribes, is that they want the strongest. They want to have the people who are going to be the people of legend. So it made it a softer thing when it could have been really disgusting and brutal.
I agree. It is also, I know I've already said this, but it bears repeating. I think just such an effective plan. It's just such a brutal way to destroy an entire village. You've just completely wiped out the possibility that this little culture will survive at all.
Mm-hmm. Not even just like physically from like, oh, you've obliterated the generation from the earth, but I think that psychological element too. You have taken out all of their strongest, youngest, young bucks of the tribe, to the point where the women of that tribe are like, I didn't even want those guys. Yeah. So I think that psychological element of it as well. It's like it's destroyed physically, mentally, emotionally. Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you've got my kid. Go back to our village. You'll be welcomed as one of us. Mm-hmm. Raise my children there. Now you are us.
Yeah.
It's like diabolical.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have I believe then we have this fight with we actually do encounter the first the dogs. We have the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we do is they have heightened senses. Dellum like smells wet fur on the air, and it's like there's dogs around. He's like, okay, cool. I've been thinking about this. I got a plan. Climbing the tree, and then he like leaps on the back of the leader dog and dominates it.
It becomes the alpha.
Amazing.
It's amazing because I like that he doesn't like outright slaughter the alpha. He dominates the alpha, and then the person who's like, oh, alpha's down. My time to shine.
Yeah.
He like gets rid of that one.
Right.
So he does kill one of them. He shows I'm stronger than the alpha and the person who would challenge him. And everybody's like, that's cool with us. We just some puppet dogs.
Well, I love that he like makes eye contact with the dog. Is like, you're mine now. You're mine. I am.
Yeah.
You get this. You got this. It's like, follow me now. And the dog's like, yup.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting, sort of as the thing develops over time, is, well, first of all, immediately we have like a bunch of dogs, but then when I started realizing that these are like giant people, I'm like, oh, those aren't just like dogs; those are big wolves again.
Right.
We've seen a lot of big wolves in the past. We've seen a lot of wolf-like people that only have one functional eye in the past.
Yeah.
As soon as they were like a bunch of dogs, I'm like, are these like I don't know.
Interesting. They might be. I mean, not to leap ahead.
Yeah.
The Teblor are the Jagged, right?
That is that assumption as well. They haven't described them other than being huge physically at all. And the Jagged in my memory have like tusks, right? They're like big.
Yes.
Tusked. And the violence there, yes, there's like, that is my impression as well.
And doesn't who's hanging out with Icarium in Dead House Gates? Mappo. Doesn't Mappo have a wooden sword like this that's unbreakable?
No, I don't think Mappo does. It's the they're not called Teblor. They have. Is it Mappo? There's somebody. It wasn't Mappo because it was the person who was near Shaik when she got her head exploded.
Oh, was it? Okay, all right.
But it was they didn't call it Bloodwood. Obviously, they've made it very clear that there's a different language here, so there's possibly a translation. Could be the same thing. Yeah. But there is somebody else who has a wooden sword. I made that mental connection too, but I don't think we ever got their name.
Okay.
They were
cool.
But it was
You're right. That was one of the
guards, kind of.
Guards. Yeah. What was he called? I thought
it was
started with a
T. T.
Yeah. Maybe it was Teblor.
Yeah.
Oof. Gotta go back and look. Okay. So now we have a pack of dogs that we are leading as well, and then we have this really awesome. One of the coolest things we forgot to mention after the first fight, when we came upon the dudes, is that Byroth got himself a bear head, a bear skull.
I thought that was interesting, and then as soon as I started realizing the scale of the people, I was like, how big would that bear? Because it was big for him having to wield it with two hands. Anyway, massive bear skull, and he's just like, anybody else got straps I could borrow? They're like, sure, I'm not using my straps. It felt like, running around your pack of your bag of holding, being like, you can have my rope. Sure, here's my rope. I'm not using it. But just wrapping around the skull. And I'm like, what's he gonna do with that thing? I thought it was gonna be a helmet or a shoulder pad.
The image of him swinging a bear skull like a bolo.
Yeah.
That is epic. And I've never seen that idea before. And then, throwing it at people and taking out people and horses with this giant bear skull bolo. Come on.
That's
awesome.
Awesome. And like one of those moments where you're like, yeah, maybe Karsa is like the brains of the operation. And then Bayroth is constantly described as like this, like the bigger dude. Karsa's like, you're smart. Use your head. And seeing that he's like just such a force of nature in his own right is awesome.
Yeah. So we have this big fight on this kind of wooden pathway, this kind of plank in the mud, and really another really cool action sequence. And that's where we get the one dog who lost a leg, the 3-legged dog that is mate to Gnaw, the leader that Karsa dominated. And I love the talk about like, I'm so glad I didn't put you down, 3-legged dog. I vow that you're going to be, you're going to be gray nosed and hanging out with me by the hearth someday. I was like, so rad.
Man, Karsa got to chill on the vows.
Dude likes to vow. He loves to vow.
I'm like, you could just set a goal. Like the vow, everything he did is like, I vow this. I'm like, you don't have to vow that the dog's going to be fine. You could just take care of it. Chill out, bro.
We also find out that Karsa's big plan is to kind of pretend to be one of the other tribes and cause a war between the Sunid and the Rathid, which I think is pretty cool, just tactically. And then we have this scene where they are kind of come to this dead end and they find a cave. Oh, but this is the start of chapter 2. Okay, so the end of chapter 1 is Byroth and Delam are both like, I guess you're cool. I guess you're awesome, war leader.
Oh yeah.
I guess we like you. We doubted you, but we will follow you, which is pretty rad.
Mm-hmm.
And then chapter 2 begins I had such an interesting experience because a couple of times, you're immersed in it. These chapters are kind of long and meaty and interesting, and you're immersed in this completely new culture and this kind of new thing where we're in one POV the whole time. And then the first couple of times that stuff I know from the other books starts bleeding in, it felt so special.
Yes. I agree. We talked about it in the non-spoiler section, but like how disorienting it kind of felt, like knowing that I was in the same world, and I felt like I was clawing for like little details, like trying to read into anything, being like, what does this mean? Where am I? Who am I? Kind of moment. And then the interest of who Karsa is went on long enough that I kind of let that fall away from my brain. And then the second it comes in again, I'm like, oh yeah, oh, delicious.
This is that moment where they find this cave and there's writing on the wall. And it's literally describing the laws of Icarium. And I was like,
I was very intrigued from like the very first, everything about the cave scene, from Gnaw sitting there and like lying really flat and really focused to make sure there's not like a threat in there.
Yeah.
And then it describes that there's like a gleam in Gnaw's eye being like, oh yeah, the cave's safe. All right. That makes me be like, what if Gnaw is a Divers or something? Or what if Gnaw
Nah, dog.
He just seems, there's like I know we mentioned all the animals seem to have an intelligence, but there's a specificity to the intelligence in that moment that I'm like, Is he thinking more about what this is? Does he know those words are there? And he's like, Rover here, rough, kind of moment. And then
Shaggy.
And then reading through it all, and just the way that they're sort of friendship / they're like war colleagues, war buddies. Like
war colleague.
My war colleague.
Well, I'd like to introduce you to my war colleague.
like
we make war together.
Reading the stuff on the wall and being like, over here, Karsa, read this one. And he's like, it just butt dock. Was like a sweet portrayal of that friendship while we learn about basically like Icarium is like, things are messed up. We gotta split these. Basically says that he wrote the rules for how the tribes are. He's made them function in this particular way, and it's devastating because it's going to make them brutal. It's like evolutionary step backwards. And I don't know if it's in this moment or in like the next scene where there's like a clear reason why where I guess they had been like within their tribes too many times, and possibly there was like too much inbreeding. I don't know if there's a broader reason. I assume it might be tied into the fact that they're Jaghut, which we know is like violence. Sorry, I'm like going on a long rant here, but like combination of inbreeding, Jaghut violence, you need to do this separation and making sure that you're going through and like going into other tribes, killing all their kids, and then impregnating their women seems like a great way to be like, these ones are probably still defective. These ones will be good. Like making survival of the fittest through structuring these tribe interactions. It was like a plan to fix whatever was wrong in a brutal, brutal way.
It's wild. So this notion of these sort of very primitive traditions and you know, absolutely brutal, you think of almost subhuman treatment of each other, came from a very detached, intelligent analysis of the problem. It's such a cool dynamic dichotomy there of you know, you would assume that it's just like, oh, they're primitive people, they don't have any, you know, much you know, cultural intelligence as far as not knowing that there's, you know, human rights and et cetera, et cetera. But no, it's not that at all. It's not that they're just early on in their development. It's that they developed really far and went, this ain't working. We got to come up with some awful thing. And the only way we're going to make this work is by forgetting all the stuff we know, is like going back to a more primitive way of being. It's such an interesting...
It's like a dark prime directive.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they are like watching, seeing, making changes to the culture, and then being like, all right, hands off, let it fix itself kind of situation. It's so interesting. And like you could just see that even the way that they talk about it, like the laws of our culture, our gods have to be this way. We must do these things.
Yeah.
The thing for me is like, how did they infuse that? They're like, Akarium did this and it was messed up and tragic. But how do you convince these tribes to split? And then I guess you just get elders in every tribe that are like, this is the way it's got to be, like lying from then on about their tribes. Like you get one generation agreeing to it and every other generation just assumes that's the way it's always been. Fascinating.
I mean, it's I don't want to get too controversial here, but you know, it speaks to like religion in general.
Yeah.
You know, and how you control a people is through their belief system, right? Pretty interesting stuff. I also loved the fact that there's, you know, we're getting Delum reading this thing, and he comes to a couple of words he doesn't know, and then later on we get I think it's Byroth telling us what he thought those words were, which is such an awesome way to convey that information, because it made me like, oh, now I know what those words. Let's go back and plug them in. And so he said, we must dismantle our great villages, which would be cities, I would guess, and burn our yellow bark and leave naught but ash. Burn doesn't work, but yellow ash or yellow bark made me think gold. Burn our currency, burn our gold. What do you think yellow bark was?
I mean, I too went back and like filled in the gaps with the sentence. Yellow bark was definitely one of those things where I was like, we'll learn what that means later.
I thought it might be
That's
like
interesting.
gold, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I liked that it was like Karsa was reading, like, I don't know those words, but Byroth was like, I know those words. And he sort of like processed it before bringing it up again. I liked that. There was just like a lot of interesting dynamics at play there, with Delum willing to be like, yeah, you're right, probably lies, maybe, like leaving, and Byroth immediately being more questioning. And the strain of them finding this cave on literally the end of that first chapter of them being like, we follow you, war leader, to being like, immediately doubts about our whole, like the foundations of our society have instantly creeped back in.
That is one of the coolest things about these two chapters, is that rise and fall of the loyalties and the relationship between them. Because you're like, I don't like you, is strained, I don't really like you, to like, oh my gosh, you are a great war leader, we got to follow you, to back to like doubts, and how that goes back and forth is really fun. It's a fun ride.
Yeah.
So then we get to this really another awesome scene where they go to the Sunned village, It's abandoned. Don't know where any of the Sunid went. But
when I first read this and they were like, we're pretty sure there's like some kind of battle here, I was like, is this where Akarium like killed everybody, including his dad?
Oh, right. Well, I think we find out later that they've been turned into slaves. Yeah.
Yeah. At that moment, I was like, is this it? Is this the one?
That's interesting. But then they find this glowing rock with a hand sticking out of the ground that has too many joints in it.
Yeah.
So rad. It moves.
They're like,
and
it's probably friendly.
What should we do? What should we do? Should we turn around and walk away and pretend we never saw this?
The dogs are all freaked out.
Yeah.
Probably means nothing.
Should we B, go back and tell somebody and find out more information about it? Or should we C, just let it out and see what happens?
There we go. That young bravado, and just reading that cave wall and being like, we have doubts, but if we doubt it, that means Akarium is that they like use their doubt of the writings that they read to be like, but if we doubt that, then we should doubt this.
Yeah.
They like logic their way into being like, get the rock off. Like, it's so
yeah. Dude, I love this part so much, not just because I think it's the first time we've seen the Forkal Assail. Have we seen them before?
We've seen them, like their dead limbs in the
right, but we've not seen like a living one.
Correct.
Yeah. Awesome. The most alien of the species. So I mean, I guess dinosaurs with swords for arms is alien.
I wanted to go through and just like all 3 previous books. Control F, Forkal Assail. What do we have here?
I know, right?
I didn't, but yes, I was very excited as soon as they said.
My recollection is that they were one of the original 4
races,
species. Yeah.
Yes.
But they're now extinct in our current timeline.
Were they the ones that were before the Kachin Chamali?
I can't remember. I can't remember if it was that way or if the Kachin Chamali were even predate that. But maybe I can't remember.
I know.
But yeah, they were one of the original 4. So they kind of talk themselves into lifting the rock. It's like, oh, Akarium, I remember that name. The Spirit Wars. That sounds right. Let's just let it out and see what happens. I'm sure it'll be grateful. I'm sure it'll be
so
us.
Nice to us.
I'm expecting sick high fives from like spindly jointed fingers. Like I've never gotten one of those before, so let's do it. Unfortunately, not exactly what happens. They let her out, and she immediately attacks Karsa, which is rad. And Biolof's like, "We saved you," and she's like, "I don't care."
She's like, "I was trapped under a rock. You think that I was put there because I'm so nice?"
And even what you do to nice people.
What's her name? Calm.
Calm, yeah.
Calm, and being like, yeah,
she's the bringer of peace.
I'm the bringer of peace in that everybody gonna die.
Peace being you dead.
Death. Yeah.
But before we even get there, the description of the fact that she was trapped under this thing awkwardly and spent thousands of years
like
slowly digging a hole just to be slightly more comfortable underneath. What an amazing idea.
Here's a question. You're gonna bury evil being,
immortal
being under a magical rock. Don't you just tuck that hand under? Don't you just tuck the hand so nobody's like?
I go a step farther.
Cut it off.
I write a little message. Do not lift rock. Please do not lift rock.
Peace equal death.
Yeah. Rock is here for a reason.
She's called Calm because you can't be stressed when you're dead, baby.
She talks in some really, non-specific way. It's vague what she's talking about, but she also tells, I think Byroth that Karsa is going to change the world.
Yeah, she's like, if I told you anything about what he's gonna do, you'd just kill him outright.
Yeah.
If you're like,
If I
very well,
get that piece of information, I go, you've
I guess
already
I'll
told me
kill him."
enough.
So you're saying that I should bring him peace.
Yeah.
I thought it was so interesting when she was released because we've been with the tribe the whole time, and I think she's the first person who speaks more in like the dialect, the
Yeah.
cadence of the way she talks, and the casualness of how she talks. She's
Yeah.
like, ugh, Akarium, he probably doesn't even remember this idiot. Kind
Yes.
of got a little edge to her,
Dude.
in a way that we haven't. It's like a first taste of like, oh yeah, there's the book of the fallen that I know so well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was going to mention this when we kind of get to the Malazans that show up later, but it's an amazing thing. It is exactly what Erikson was talking about with us about his use of language, and how just the use of language can convey so much nuance. And you're right. We've been in this cadence, this manner of speaking, this sort of inside Karsa's thoughts, and everything is structured in a very similar way.
Everything has like a weight. There's like a gravitas to their mission, their victory. Everybody is their first name, last name, first name, last name. Yes.
And then we have a deviation from that pattern, and it lands with such impact. I love it. I was just blown away by that. It's like, oh man, he just switches it up, and you go, oh yeah. Not everybody thinks and talks like this. Here's somebody different. I agree. And then amazing that she just like immediately slams into Deln's forehead, leaving fingerprints in his skull, just like 4 fingers of death. And what happens to him, where his like, cerebral spinal fluid leaks out, and he becomes, like he kind of associates with the dog pack.
But what I thought was interesting is I imagine that was part of her influence, because she dealt like a seriously devastating blow, but he was calm and he had found happiness.
Oh, you're
and
right.
So to me, that was like an influence of her magic, because no matter who you are, if your brain has been damaged in some way, you have a big split through your skull so that your spine fluid's coming out, you're in pain. You are not having a good time. But he was like up and hopping around,
smiling
in no time.
all the time. Yeah.
And the thing that got me, again, this was like the moment where I was like, what is with these dogs and these one-eyed people? Half of his face stops working, but he has one functional eye, as far as I can tell. Maybe he's blind in both, but like one functional side of his face, and now he's a dog man. And I was like, talk, where you at, boy?
Right. Well, also, we skipped over it, but when we were talking about the Found tribe, one of the details was that Lady Sibyl, or whatever her name was, would rip off half of their face too, so they couldn't make expressions.
Yes, yeah. Which is gross.
Super gross. Super gross. This is the moment where we have this awesome confrontation between Karsa and Bayroth. Pardon me. And Bayroth is basically like, dude, you're a putz. Dalis and I have been in love for a long time. We literally laugh at you. Yeah. So good. Such an own,
an own. And I'm also like, still mean. Does he deserve it? Yes. Yeah. Will he obviously kill you? Yes.
Yeah. And that other thing we skipped over that was I found to be such a chilling, powerful moment was when he was with the having sex with all the ladies, and the last lady, he was like, "Do you want to know my name? No, I will call you Dalis." It's like,
yeah,
you're a sad boy.
Gross.
You're a sad boy.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
Gross.
That was like the moment, or again, that like just a despicable dude.
Yeah, he's gross, but also kind of awesome.
But also
kind of awesome. So we'll probably accelerate through some of this, but we meet up with the Lowlanders. They're having this fight. Bayroth and Karsa are having this fight, and all of a sudden, Lowlanders are coming. Tiny little human-sized people they call children.
The children.
The children are here. They're armored. They look like normal people. I'm like, oh, wow, when are we? Who are they? And
there was a moment where I was like, oh, the mission to kill children was just human people. Yes, they killed children, 40-year-old children, but these are like the people, and it's not like time to slaughter the babies.
yeah, I think it's both.
It is definitely
I think
both.
it's both. Yeah, the one of the summaries I read preparing for this episode after I read the chapters was like, it had the same thing of like, phew, and all the readers were relieved. And I'm like, I don't think he's letting us off the hook completely. I think they're still awful, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so Karsa, in his total Karsa Orlong way, is like, bad guys,
Get 'em.
Let's go get them. I'm going to run headlong into that chaos. Goes out and tries to attack them. The first time we've seen magic, like full-on magic, casting fire around him. He just steps right out of it.
And the people are, importantly, at the rock. We don't know what they were going to do, but they were witnessing the fact that they had freed Calm from the place.
Yeah. Yes. Big fight here. We escape, and instead of chasing them as they could have done, Karsa says, "No, let's keep going toward Bone Pass." We get to Bone Pass. It lives up to its name.
Lots of bones.
Lots of bones.
In a pass.
I immediately thought of the prologue to Deadhouse Gates. I think when we see what's his name?
The Crippled God?
No, not the Crippled God, but because of the K. He's sitting on the throne with all the bones. I killed everybody, so you couldn't kill me. But I don't think that's Calor. Thank you. But that's not. I don't think that's those bones. I think these are the bones of the Talana Moss, because they have described as having like horns, helms, and stuff. And then later, Bone Pass is referred to as Talon Pass.
Yes, yeah. I didn't put that together, but I agree with your assessment.
So interesting. We get to there. They have to climb through the bones, and like, how are we going to get back? We're going to climb those bones.
And they
again?
also say something like the weapons there had been hardened, so they're like stone. There's like a bunch of little clues there.
Yeah. They cause an avalanche. All kinds of crazy stuff happens there. But then we get to Silver Lake. Again, delightful place in Los Angeles with some great restaurants.
The same thing the whole time. I had great ramen there.
But Karsa's like, I'm gonna murder everybody, and Byroth's like, probably not a great idea, but let's go. And Karsa charges in, kills a farmer, tramples another woman. It's so awesome how they are giants. The horses are giant horses. It really made me think of the fight scenes in Avatar, with the 9-foot tall Na'vi fighting regular human-sized people.
That is probably the right scale as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's such an awesome image of how they're, like trampling things, and there's these regular human beings. And the one guy calls him a giant at one time. It's so rad.
Mm-hmm. Realizing the scale of them, like through these scenes and then into like them actually in the sort of city area.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just awesome being like, oh yeah, me? There's like 50 dudes. That's fine.
Yeah.
Myself and my horse, it's very exciting visuals to me.
Totally. All the action, all the fight scenes, so cool, incredibly cool. But it leads to this heart-wrenching moment for me. I don't know how you felt, but with Delum being in his, new sort of doggy state, and at one point the 3-legged dog is being beaten by these villagers, and Delum is just screaming and trying to he's already been attacked, and he's just trying to crawl, get to it. He has
javelin in his hip, and he's just trying to get to his friend. And in the scenes before this, like that 3-legged dog, because, she's out of the hunt, he's been like cradling her sort of against her will. Like it's his buddy.
Yeah.
And
And Byroth straight up says, you know, he finds comfort in that. He's looking for security and comfort and happiness. And that image of him shrieking and crawling on the ground, just trying to get to the three-legged dog that's being beaten to death.
so
And then he
sad.
gets shoveled to the back of the skull.
Yeah.
And right before that, Karsa screams out to Dell. It's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And the moment, something that we skipped over was, you know, in the night before they get into the city, Byroth paints Delim's face
Oh, yes. Ugh.
with a mask that their tribe symbolizes. Like, it's usually reserved for like elderly folks who are going into the battle, knowing that it will be their last, so that they can die, you know, gloriously and not, you know, at the wayside and the bedside or in sickness.
Yeah.
And he paints the mask knowing that this is likely his last battle. And the difference in the sensitivity and the sensibilities of Karsa versus Byroth, of Karsa being like, that's disrespecting anybody else who's ever done this, and him being
Right.
like, then you have no idea what this is about. If you don't
Yeah.
see why this is resonant, then don't talk to me, kind of moment. And then seeing the fulfillment of that in the street in that powerful, deeply tragic way.
Oh, man, you're so right. I'm so glad you remembered to bring that up. It was such a beautiful scene.
Mhm.
Byroth weeping and painting the face. Yeah,
Yeah.
really powerful stuff. But Dellen Thord is killed. But Karsa's, you know, murdering as many people as he possibly can. And then he chases this guy he recognizes from seeing before through a farmhouse, into a farmhouse, sneaks in, climbs up this chain up through the cargo loading hole in the top of the farmhouse, sees him down below and does a badass Assassin's Creed, you know, death from above, but is too
Like,
heavy,
gotcha.
big. He's giant. He's too big.
Big boy.
Got to test the ground first before you go leaping. And crashes right into the cellar, impaling himself in the piece of wood.
And then being
Amazing.
like, I'm impaled, I guess. Bummer. Like,
Yeah,
the
I
indifference
really wish
to
I could move.
the indifference to like the pain that they seem to be experiencing throughout this whole thing is very interesting.
Yeah.
And then immediately, you know, we get the children. What are they, Malazan? Or they're the
No, they are. I don't know what.
There was like two communities. One was like the slave, or three maybe. There's like the slaver guy whose name I forget. And then Silgar. And then there was the guy who's like, I go by this, but you can call me Cufflink or something. What's his name?
I don't know who you're talking about.
The guy who's like strutting around and being like, ah ha ha, I've got you. You remember me? I got away on the mountain.
Damask?
Oh, yeah.
The tattoo? The guy with the tattoo from the Grey Dog
Damask,
Army?
not Cufflink.
Yeah. Cufflink is a good one, though. Mr. Erikson, you're free to use Cufflink in a future. I mean, maybe there's 6 more novels. We might run into Cufflink at this point.
Damask is like, it is I, the person from the mountain, and I've caught you. We're going to tie you up. Be a nice boy now. And he's like, well, I can't not.
Yeah.
I'm impaled.
I would kill you if I could. Can't.
And then he seems sort of like the middleman between Silgar and the Malazan army.
Well, yeah. So there's this weird thing where the Malazans are coming into town. I mean, we can accelerate through some of this. It's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, but they are coming into town. The Malazans are coming into town. I don't know why. I can't remember why, but it just happens.
They were on their way to another city, and they were stopping.
Oh, that's
here.
right. There's suppressing a rebellion in 7 cities, right?
In maybe that's it. But it started with a B.
Oh yeah,
the city.
It's Betris.
Betris, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have Karsa in the gulag, basically, in the sewer, tied to a tree trunk. I imagine like a long pole. And dude, like,
this is where it like turns around, where suddenly I'm like, get out of there, man. Like, he's a despicable guy. He's so nasty. He's so full of himself. I guess he's chosen, whatever. But then as soon as he's like in this hole with a bunch of people who, like, the second there's somebody who's like, my slaves, I'm like, well, that guy's got to die.
Right.
So I'm like, get out of there. Get him. Yeah.
I feel like there's a number of places where this chapter could have ended already, but like by the time we're chained to the thing, it's so awesome. And then we get Torvald Nom,
Yes.
who clearly related to Rallick Nom,
yes,
our dude who's covered in ototerol and currently passed out inside a
one of the houses,
a Zath house. Yeah, right.
As soon as we got a name again, the peeling of the layers from like, okay, where are we? When are we?
Yeah.
Okay, there's somebody who talks familiarly. Okay, here the Malazans are coming. Okay, we know them. Okay, a Nom, baby. It just was like the escalation of familiarity and diving into this world. So fun,
dude. The first time he goes Hood's breath, I was like, oh, we're back. We're back. It was such a cool moment of like, oh, we're talking in the sort of colloquial slang of the Malazan books.
And then like the gravitas to the way that the of course now Torvald, what are they called?
Yeah, no. Torvald Nom, yeah.
What's the the name of the giant people?
Oh, yes.
Teblor.
Teblor,
like the gravitas, the way they talk, suddenly it seems so overwrought and silly to the point where Torvald's like being like a little bit sassy and that he's like some familiarity with their ways. He's like, don't bless me with your puny gods, child. And like he's like,
I hope you get Opon's luck. I'm like, I know what Opon's luck means. But Carson's like, what? Who gives a crap about your god?
Stop that.
So rad. And I love, like you, I was in that moment of like, I don't know when we are. Is this Rallick Nom's like grandfather, great-great-grandfather? I don't know. How far back are we? Like what time period are we in? Because again, I didn't bother to match up Burn's sleep number. But by the way, if you want to have a great night's sleep, use the Burn sleep number on your Tempur-Pedic bed. But no, I think Torvald is a cousin to Rallick Nom. So I think it's sort of contemporaries. And this amazing moment where I just love it so much, where Torvald's like, hey, do me a solid, murder all my friends and myself.
Just end it.
Awful down here. All we want to do is drown in the sewage,
muck,
which is one way to go, I guess. Awful.
Not on my top 10 list personally, but
yeah. He's like, please just wrap the chains around the log to the point where we get pulled under the water and drown and let us sweet release, please. And he's like, okay, I'll do it, buddy. And you just hear like, splash. He's like, you're doing great. All my friends are dying.
And I love that he's like, why do you want to die? And he's like, things are bad. He like throws him like the tooth or whatever to be like, look, I'm rotting, I'm dying anyways, kind of thing.
Oh, I think that was wasn't that an offer of a trophy?
Oh, a trophy.
Because he's like, I give you trophies. He's like, you don't have any trophies. He's like, here, have my tooth.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, one more, and then it's me. And then he's like winding up to do it, and he's like, wait, I changed my mind. He's like, I haven't.
So rad. It's like, oh, dude, you're doing great. You're murdering all my buddies. That guy's dead. That guy's drowned. Awesome. Okay, my turn. Wait, no. Change of heart. So funny. So beautiful. It's just an amazing introduction to a character.
And him like immediately being like, I've changed my mind. And he's like, I haven't, dropping it. And then you hear him like squabbling out of there and be like, bleh, and like making it out. And he goes, hey, good job, little buddy. And he's like, yeah, I guess I didn't really want to die anyway. And then they just kind of move past the fact that he wanted to die and not be there anymore.
The way they describe him, he's pulled under the log and he squirms out the other side, and he like describes it like he comes out all brown. Yeah. It's like, oh, so foul.
Disgusting.
So foul, but just an awesome introduction to a character. Like, please kill us. Please kill us. You've killed all my friends. Wait, not me. Not me. Not me. It's so good. Yeah. And then we have Karsa finally breaking out, like so badass. Like everybody being like, well, we're down here forever. I guess this is our lot in life. He's
Like
like, not
nobody's
me.
ever broken out, and he's like, okay, just keeps trying.
And oh, dude, the best part of the whole thing is that, but you talked about how like their size, their immunity to pain and everything. It really does feel like a description of a superhuman, like almost a superhero. And the coolest superhuman moment of the whole 2 chapters is him muscling out the head of the arrow from his body.
Just I felt like I could
thinking
feel
about
it.
And, so rad. And then using that as a means to dig out, to free himself. He like smuggled an arrowhead in his flesh into prison.
And I just love how that builds up into like his escape and sort of where we leave the chapter at the end.
Yeah.
So not only are we like, okay, he's super strong. We've got him. He's like, all right, peace out. He like forces the grate open. He helps Torvald out. He's like, okay, little guy, you've earned my respect. Get out of here, you little scamp. And then he goes through and he's like, well, I'm not just going to run away. I'm going to like finish killing everybody here.
Yeah, right. Torvald's like, all right, we're free. Let's go. I got some friends. We can go meet up with them. And he's like, oh, I have no intention of leaving. I'm going to murder everybody.
So goes through and tries to kill everybody again, finds somebody else to impregnate again. And then the like something that like doesn't even register for like how scary it's been in the previous books. They go very explicitly into like him brushing off the sorcery, which we saw it earlier, but it almost didn't register that it was sorcery happening because he was like, yeah, fire was kind of there. And I was like, I walked through it. But then he gets blasted by some stuff. They walk through it, gets captured by like a magical net that they're like, wouldn't anybody else be just obliterated by this thing? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, the fact that he's just there staring at us.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's
not good.
Dangerous dude. Yeah. And we kind of settle there.
We get introduced to a whole grip of new characters with awesome names like Limp and Ebron. That net was, we were told was meant to stun the Denrabi, which we've seen, these giant sea worms that we've seen in previous books. I also love the fact that he like puts the blood oil on his sword and he's like, he just kisses it for a second. And he's like, "What?" And
then he like blacks out.
Yeah, he's like, all I want to do now is just get it on. He just like doesn't even mean to. It's just like and then anyway, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we end with him captured yet again by the Malazans, who now claim ownership of him because he's killed some Malazan soldiers. He has attacked Malazan property. So now the Malazans are in ownership of him, and they also are, we are told, have captured Torvald Nam, who, as he was fleeing. So I assume we're going to get those two reunited in being prisoners yet again.
Yes. Fun first two chapters.
Just incredible. I know we already went long. It's just so much fun. I'm loving this so much. It's such a romp. It's so full of juicy, cool, insanely creative stuff. I can't believe novel 4 is kicking off at such a high note.
Yeah.
Really
very
cool.
hype. It's very exciting to be back. I can't wait to, keep a more consistent schedule through the holidays and see what everybody else has to say about us finally diving in.
All right, let's do some of our favorite quotes from this week. Do you have one queued up? I have 2. There's a bunch, but I have 2.
There was a bunch. I have 3. I have 3. 2 of them are short.
Cool. You start.
All right. My first one is after Delum got smoked by Calm, the conversation between Bayroth and Karsa. The 3 Teblor were as children before her. Delum should have seen that, instantly, should have stayed his hand as Bayroth had done. Instead, the warrior had been foolish, and now he crawled among the dogs. The faces in the rock held no pity for foolish warriors, so why should Karsa Orlong? Bayroth Guild was indulging himself, making regret and pity and castigation into sweet nectars, leaving him to wander like a tortured drunk.
Oh, man, so good. So good. So good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's my first one. It's short. This is when early on in chapter 1, when Karsa goes and visits his dad and asks for his blessing, and his dad says, "I'm not going to bless you." Karsa says, "Mother would have blessed me." Karsa snapped. "As a mother must, but her heart would have been heavy."
That was almost one of mine.
I love that.
I have another.
Your mom has to. She's your mom, but she wouldn't have felt good about it. I love it.
My my medium length one is again Karsa and Bayroth just being mad at each other.
Yeah.
This is before Delim is killed. Is before as he gets his head injury. And Bayroth had said something, and Karsa's like, "Shut up!" and like wants to fight him in that moment. "Stand before me, Bayroth Guild, for I will not kill you whilst your sword remains at your side." "I will not, Corsa Orlong. The straw is on my back, and you are not my enemy." The idea of being like, the portrayal of like, I am relaxed because we are friends. I just loved that portrayal of the relationship in a single sentence.
One of the things that Erikson does better than almost anybody is coming up with these culturally specific sayings for his invented cultures. And like the straws on your back is one of those great ones where it's so evocative. It's like, it's this insult of like, you lay in bed too much, the straws on your back. I loved it. Love it. All right, here's my last one. It's kind of long, but this one was like chef's kiss. It's also Karsa and Bayroth arguing, and Bayroth says, "Bayroth made no move. You do not see what I see," he said quietly. "There is the potential within you, Karsa Orlong, to be your father's son. I lied earlier when I said I prayed that you would remain free of doubt. I pray for the very opposite, war leader. I pray that doubt comes to you, that it tempers you with its wisdom. Those heroes in our legends, Karsa Orlong, they were terrible. They were monsters, for they were strangers to uncertainty."
That's a good one.
That's the thing, man. If you're so sure about everything, if there's no room in your mind for doubt, for self-analysis, for liquidity of thought and opinion, of accepting new information and analyzing what you know, you are the monster. I love that. I love it.
Yes. My very last one is like very, very teeny tiny. And this is what I would want to like shake my 17-year-old self and say this at her. To feel nothing is not a virtue.
Yeah. So good. So good. We're in it.
We in it, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Thanks for your comments.
Thanks for your patience.
Thanks for your patience. And I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Our goal is to be here throughout. We're going to try to get these episodes recorded in a timely fashion and keep going throughout the holidays. But we will communicate to you as that goes. Next week, I have not looked how many chapters we're doing, but it's in the Discord. The Discord, of course, is 5x5 DLC on Discord. And the folks have prescribed our game plan for this novel. I think it's another 2 chapters, but I'm not quite sure. We'll be back. Oh, please send us non-spoiler topics that you want to hear us talk about. We'd love to get topics from you. dlcfeedback@gmail.com is the best place to send them, or you can post them in the Discord.
But make sure you tag us.
That's right. Tag us, because we're trying to avoid spoilers, and there's a lot of discussion about House of Chains already. We get a little nervous. About it. Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Let's dance it out.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends. So join the book club by